Hello, and welcome to the final module of Scaling Scrum. Additional tools for large projects. Large Project Communication Plan is the first tool. The communications plan for a large project is created by the Chief Product Owner, Chief Scrum Master, and Scrum Guidance Body, with inputs from other product owners, Scrum Masters, Scrum Teams, and other relevant persons. A large project communications plan is essential in a large project as miscommunication or lack of communication on the project can be detrimental to the collaborative efforts and ultimately result in project failure. A communications plan should include information pertaining to how communications will take place across all Scrum teams and to business stakeholders, including the communication methods to be used, the communication channels or mechanisms to communicate key information, the responsibilities for communications, the classification of and means to deal with sensitive information, the timing of communication activities, and the processes to access communication effectiveness. The communications plan should also include the timing and frequency of the Scrum of Scrums meetings and how these meetings will be conducted. Each Scrum team may have its own communications plan that specifies the records that must be created and distributed, and how these records will be maintained throughout the project. The plan should also include the methods to be used to convey important project information to business stakeholders, and who is responsible for all the various communication activities. Since it may be very difficult for everyone in a large project to be co-located, using a Scrum project tool may help facilitate effective communication. The next tool is Large Project Resource Planning. Resource planning for large projects is essential due to the complexity of allocating various types of resources to the numerous Scrum teams working in parallel. There will be competing needs for scarce resources, and the Chief Product Owner and other product owners must plan for delivering the greatest value in the shortest amount of time. Resource planning in a large project should take into consideration the various costs associated with resources, such as people, training, hardware and software, external services, and physical space. The Chief Product Owner and other product owners may have to coordinate with external sources to acquire resources and augment staff, e.g., external resources may need to be hired to work with the existing full-time team and may also need to interact with the existing vendor management team within the organization. When hiring external resources, the Chief Product Owner and team must comply with organizational policies for dealing with external resources and vendors. In large projects, the Chief Product Owner may also need to consider additional resource planning to address the needs of specialized teams and the need for setting up environments for numerous Scrum teams working in parallel. The Chief Product Owner and the product owners can collaborate with Scrum Masters and Scrum teams to define the specialized skills required for the large project, the number of resources required, the Scrum teams that need specialized skills, and allocation estimation. Environment identification is the third tool to discuss. The Chief Scrum Master works with other Scrum Masters, relevant product owners, Scrum team members, supporting services, the Scrum Guidance Body, and other experts as required to identify the required and appropriate environments that will be needed to effectively complete the large project. This should preferably happen once the initiate phase or when required by the teams and/or the Scrum Guidance Body. In a large project, it is important to identify the number and types of environments needed because numerous Scrum teams will be working simultaneously to carry out the work of their respective sprints, and environment needs could be complicated and may conflict. Some examples of environments include software development or test areas, physical work areas, or environments with specialized equipment. Process boundaries for each Scrum team may also affect environments. Also, with distributed teams working in different time zones, it may be possible to conduct 24-hour testing and maximize the use of different environments. Therefore, it is imperative to create an environment schedule which shows the testing times for each team. For software projects, the environment schedule can also include information on how and by whom code will be promoted to each environment. The fourth tool is Prioritized Product Backlog Assignment. In a large project, the prioritized product backlog, with its corresponding epics and user stories, is created by the chief product owner and other product owners in much the same way as for a typical small Scrum project. The creation of epics and user stories by the product owners may depend on multiple factors, such as how the requirements were collected from the business stakeholders, and knowledge and experience or skill set of the product owners. The chief product owner and other product owners work together to review the prioritized product backlog and determine which epics and user stories will be owned by each product owner. Although some epics and user stories may be created by a particular product owner, they may be assigned to another product owner to manage and implement as part of the large Scrum project. Epics and user stories must be prioritized, and some pre-existing estimates may be used to facilitate their assignment to different product owners. The assignment of epics and user stories to product owners is influenced by other factors, such as the product owner who created the epic or user story, as he or she will often own its implementation, the product owner who has the team with the appropriate skill sets to complete the epic or user story, the specific customer, sponsor, or organization linked to the epic or user story, as there could be a past relationship with a particular product owner, and the number of dependencies pertaining to each epic or user story, as grouping user stories with a lot of dependencies under one product owner could allow the teams to work relatively independent of each other without the need to spend too much time in coordination with other teams. The assignment and prioritization of epics or user stories to product owners can be done over a period of time through meetings and, if possible, through the use of a Scrum project tool. Scrum of Scrums meeting is the next tool. A Scrum of Scrums meeting is an important element when scaling Scrum to large projects. The objective of most Scrum of Scrums meetings is the synchronization of teams during the creation of deliverables, but also could be used for sharing best practices after retrospect sprint meetings and for planning future sprints. The frequency of Scrums meetings is project-specific and depends on project size and complexity, dependencies between different teams, etc. If epics or user stories and sprints can be completed without too much interaction of other epics or user stories, these meetings may not be required too often. On the other hand, if the dependencies are high, then a higher frequency of Scrums meetings may be required. Typically, there is one representative in the Scrum of Scrums meetings from each Scrum team, usually the Scrum Master, but it is also common for other members of a Scrum team to attend the meeting if this makes sense. This meeting is usually facilitated by the Chief Scrum Master and is intended to focus on areas of coordination and integration between the different Scrum teams. These are preferably short meetings where at least one representative from each Scrum team, e.g. the Scrum Masters and/or others, meet to share the status of the work being done by their respective teams, somewhat similar to the daily stand-up meeting. They are usually not time-boxed to allow all representatives to share their information, even for very large projects. The Scrum of Scrums meeting is held at predetermined intervals or when required by Scrum teams to facilitate the necessary sharing of information among the various Scrum teams. Issues, dependencies, and risks impacting multiple Scrum teams can be closely monitored, which helps the multiple teams working on a large project to better coordinate and integrate their work. It is the responsibility of the Chief Scrum Master, or another Scrum Master who facilitates the Scrum of Scrums meetings, to ensure that all representatives have an environment conducive to open and honest sharing of information, including feedback to other team representatives. For larger projects involving a significant number of teams, multiple levels of Scrum of Scrums meetings may be convened to share the status of each respective team. Each Scrum team representative provides updates from his or her team in turn. These updates are usually provided in the form of answers to the following 4 specific questions. What has my team been working on since the last meeting? What will my team do until the next meeting? What were other teams counting on our team to finish that remains undone? What is our team planning on doing that might affect other teams? The answers to these 4 questions provide information that allows each team to clearly understand the work status of all other teams, and if there are or could be any issues with upcoming deliveries. The release preparation methods are the methods that will be used to execute the tasks identified in the release readiness plan to ready the deliverables to be shipped or released. These methods can be project-specific, but more likely are valid on a program or portfolio level. They may be defined by the Scrum guidance body. Release Readiness Sprint is the next tool. If there is a need for specific tasks to be performed to prepare for a release and to confirm that the minimum requirements for a release have been met, these tasks are performed in a Release Readiness Sprint. In a Release Readiness Sprint, no user stories from the prioritized product backlog are developed. Instead, the tasks as identified in the Release Readiness Plan are performed. A Release Readiness Sprint is only conducted once per release as the first step in the ship deliverables process. The length of a Release Readiness Sprint may be different from the length of other sprints. If there is a Release Readiness Sprint, its corresponding done criteria are typically unique and differ from the done criteria of the user stories for other sprints, which must still be met. Done criteria are defined with the purpose of ensuring that the sprint deliverables are potentially shippable. The Release Readiness Sprint addresses all the activities that are only done once per release based on deliberate business decisions as justified in the Release Readiness Plan. A Release Readiness Sprint is not mandatory unless there is a justified business decision to incorporate it into the project. Also, typically only the relevant team members are involved in the Release Readiness Sprint. Other Scrum team members not involved in the Release Readiness Sprint can begin work on other regular sprints. The final tool in this module is Scrum Project Tool. Since large projects involve many Scrum teams with several hundred or more people working on the project, and since teams may be distributed, there can be significant complexity and interactions between the teams. It would therefore be beneficial for the teams to have access to a structured Scrum project tool, or set of tools that can be used to automate processes, manage complexity, share information, both between teams and to business stakeholders, to generate reports, and so on. Some specific tasks that can be managed by the Scrum project tool on a large project include ability to form teams with appropriate roles and the ability to scale roles to large projects. Ability to create and maintain a prioritized product backlog for each team, including the creation, estimation, and management of epics, user stories, and tasks. Ability to support other important Scrum project artifacts, such as Scrum boards, sprint backlogs, meeting schedules and minutes, and so on. Ability to allow for seamless and effective communication between all project team members. Ability to support distributed teams. Ability to support the creation of reports and metrics as required by different Scrum roles. Ability to capture and share recommendations or expertise from the Scrum guidance body, e.g., lessons learned from retrospective sprints, best practices, Scrum-related organizational policies, and so on. With this, we have come to the end of this chapter. Thank you for learning with us.